David is an expert on employee engagement and social media and helps guide global organizations on the proper use of social software to foster engagement and create results while building relationships. David Zinger's work has ranged from pulling dead cows off trains for CP Rail to teaching counseling psychology in the Faculty of Education at the University of Manitoba for 33 years. He worked with juveniles in residential treatment and was also the employee assistance counselor for Seagram for 17 years. David has recently been interviewed about engagement by the Financial Times in the UK and Canada's Globe and Mail. He was in Warsaw this year to give a presentation on employee engagement, and he chaired an international employee engagement conference last year in Barcelona. And of course, David enjoys his visit to Smiley, Saskatchewan to view the Great Wall of Saskatchewan. He founded and hosts the Employee Engagement Network, which now boasts, I think, nearly 2,300 members dedicated to employee engagement from around the globe. So, David, thank you for joining us, and I'll admit I'm engaged. Pulling dead cows from the train tracks?
Well, thanks, David, so much for inviting me. And I'm looking at that first slide. I didn't prepare it, but it's very fitting. In Winnipeg, we have a wind of about 37 to 52 kilometers an hour out of the south-southeast, and it looks like I almost got blown off the slide. Dead cows, pulling dead cows off trains are easier than mobilizing people, and they cause less grief at times. So in some ways, once in a while, I hunger for that again, but I think overall I'd much prefer working with people.
Gotcha. I know you're passionate about engagement, David, and I think the proof is in the Employee Engagement Network. Before we get started, do you want to tell me a little bit about the mission of this community?
Well, to be totally frank, it started off as I just wanted to understand more about how networks worked. And on a Saturday afternoon, I thought the best way to find out is to do it. I think the answer to how is yes, as Peter Block so elegantly states, and I decided to say yes and start up a network, and thought if I could get 10 or 20 people together to talk about employee engagement, that I'd be pretty thrilled at that. And it's growing now. I think today it reached 2,350, 600 forums, 700 blog posts, 130 videos, and very active. Much like what you were saying, I really was very active at the start, and now I find myself just keeping up. I personally welcome everybody, so that's been a big job to welcome 2,300 and about 30 members. I'm about 20 behind right now.
That's great. So why don't I let you get to the story that you're here to tell today?
Well, there's the train. It's the CP Rail Canadian or VIA, so that's not the one with dead cows. But when we were looking at this originally, we were looking at about 15 minutes and 5 ideas and perspectives on that. So let's get rolling and move to our conductors.
Great.
There's a lot of people that I think can influence us, have contribution in social media and social business software and Enterprise 2.0, whatever the name goes from. The 4 that I chose was first Clay Shirky. I think he said such a powerful statement when he said, every URL is a latent community. And really suggesting whether it's a blog or it's a Twitter, any URL can become a community, and he's certainly one of the leading thinkers in regards to social media and what's going on, and someone I highly recommend reading and rereading. Has great questions to help people design their sites, look at their sites, look at their purpose, and what happens with that. So I very intentionally have used a number of his questions and perspectives. Keith Johnstone is Canada's hidden gem, lives in Calgary, probably the grandfather of improvisation. Managed to have the privilege of taking a 10-day course with him. I think we are in the age of strategic improvisation. I think we need to strategize what we're using our networks for, what we're hoping to achieve, while still being responsive to what the users are generating and improvising a bit. And Keith Johnson had a wonderful line, and it was just what comes next. And to be able to anticipate that and think that through is really vital and really important. Third conductor, Peter Block, magnificent writer. I mean, I can read his books again and again and then read them again and get new gems out of them. From community and the power of belonging to the answer to how is yes. He's not necessarily specifically looking at the online world. He's looking at community in general, but it doesn't take any stretch of the imagination to see what he's talking about and the applications and implications for online. And if I'm not a conductor, then I shouldn't be on the train. And I
Right.
think I've made quite a contribution in employee engagement and the whole essence of engagement and what that means, not only to engage in a community, but to get a community to engage in results that are important for an organization and the individuals.
That's great.
So stop one. And before I preface this, I want to say half of what I'm going to state is right on. Half of what I'm going to state is wrong, and I don't know the difference. And I don't say that facetiously. I think I try to do strong things, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have community, because I don't think I'm alone.
Right.
I think we have communities because when we can voice things and get participation from others, we get feedback and see what works. I strongly believe in a visible host. If you go to the Employee Engagement Network, you'll see my picture there. I want people to know that there's a host. When I work inside organizations, inside the firewall, that's one of the things I see them sometimes not doing is identifying a visible host or hostesses or a few people who are doing it. Secondly, I strongly believe in invitation. Make the network invitational, extend invitations, extend many invitations. And even at times we have to invite people to leave the network. They may be there for reasons that are counterproductive. They may be engaging in behavior that's not working. This is my own little issue, but if I'm in a business network, I want to have business pictures. I want good pictures of people. I don't want pictures of your cat or avatars. And I know that's a little bit idiosyncratic, but I think if we're in a business network, show up like you would show up at work. House party perspective, since day one, I've thought about the network I'm running as house party. I try and greet people at the door. As I said, I've greeted about 2,330 people each individually. I don't have a cut and paste. I look at each person, try to go to their website, try to learn a little bit about them. I can't retain all that. But I think thinking about that as as Stephen says, a dinner party or a party, that's just really key. Someone should be there to greet people as they come in and help people mix and mingle. And finally, a resource. I don't know if a lot of North Americans are aware of the whole work in Europe on hostmanship. If you type hostmanship into Google, you'll go to some delightful resources about the whole concept of hostmanship within organizations. It wasn't intentionally for online, but it's a really strong perspective, and I see lots of value there.
David, I find this first point, this first stop, if you will, interesting because we often talk to our customers about the value of engaging their employees in two-way dialogue. Is identifying a visible host important because of that people want to connect with people, not just, corporate missives?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I had my way in the organization, I would have the CEO or president of a huge organization who's up on the 100th floor come down and spend half a day sitting beside the security guard. They could take their BlackBerry, they could take their portable computer, they could work there, but they would sit there. They would sit at the foundation of the organization. So far, I haven't had any CEOs or presidents take me up on the invitation,
Right.
but you can do that online.
Sure.
There is no reason why your CEO or president cannot sit in the middle of the social network.
Can you give us an example of a visible host situation? You certainly talked about your mug on the Employee Engagement Network. Can you give us an example of another customer that you've worked with important?
Well, I don't want to use names of customers
Sure.
because I've got to be a little cautious with that. But one organization I'm working with is just struggling right now with identifying who is the visible host, because there are people who are trying to manage the network.
Sure.
There's a key sponsor for the network, and there's a couple other people. But I'm really saying get some pictures up there and really put a face on the network and put a face on engagement. Let people know who it is they contact, or who's moderating this, or who's running the network.
I think I already know the answer to this last question on this first stop, but I'm curious about whether identifying a visible host is as important in an internal communication such as for external communities.
Maybe more so. Maybe more so. Just, if we want people to engage, if we want people to connect with that, they need to see that people are there. Really, it's just so vital to put a face. I mean, if you go to my Employee Engagement Network, Very quickly you'll see about 21 pictures of people who are on the network or 30 pictures of people who are on the network.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been very encouraging. I didn't do that right at the start. I used to have little shadow boxes there, and I said, no, we need to put a face on this.
Sure. Well, why don't we get back on board and head to your next stop, David?
Okay.